But the power of quotes are that when a journalist includes you in an article and they include your quote, they have to mention your company name and your name or the person being quoted. No matter how the story gets rewritten or revised, they are going to have to attribute you as the source, and that's the power of quotes. I'm going to go through 4 ways to get quotes. The first way is to be famous, or at least a recognized expert. Tim Cook, Warren Buffett, Steve Ballmer, Mark Zuckerberg, when these people talk, the media listens for obvious reasons. They're famous. They're worth a lot of money. They can influence markets. They're movers and shakers. We also have Kim Kardashian, Tom Cruise, Beyonce. When these people talk, the media also listens, unfortunately. So, the pros of this way of getting quotes is it's easy. The con is it's hard to establish yourself as famous. It's not something most people can do. So I think there's not much energy that you should expend on trying to become famous, though I do think there are some things that you can do to establish yourself as an expert within your industry, and those will certainly help you to get some industry press. The second method for getting quotes is to be controversial. When the entire world is saying one thing, be that lone voice with the contrarian view. For example, the failed AT&T and T-Mobile merger. Everywhere I looked, journalists, newspapers, TV, radio, everyone said, this is why this merger is bad, and here's my expert saying it. It was never the same expert. There was literally hundreds of people being paraded and quoted everywhere. However, if you are an expert willing to defend the merger or discuss why this deal might be good for consumers, there's a strong chance the media would include you just to counterbalance the many negative quotes. You've heard about objective journalism. You have to have both sides. There was no one really out there giving the other viewpoint or the other side. If you had been that lone person out there extolling the virtues of that merger, it's quite likely you could have been picked up in hundreds and hundreds of places as just a counterbalance to all the negativity. Take a look at Office Book Inc., which is an eReleases personal publicist client. Office Book is not afraid to make some waves and ruffle some feathers by calling into question the actions of Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, who bought an island. I mean, this is definitely someone who doesn't mind being a contrarian and doesn't mind attacking a really big competitor or sort of making fun or lampooning of them. And, the pros of being controversial is it's easy to provide a contrarian viewpoint and get attention. The con is being a contrarian opens you up to judgment, backlash, and being the unpopular kid in high school all over again. This is not an appropriate strategy if you are a conservative company or organization, or you work in a place where saying something that's unpopular just won't work. So that's understandable. The third way in which you can get a quote or to get quotes is to be persistent and timely. eReleases customer Jeff Kagan has probably appeared in more than 5,000 articles over the past 10 to 20 years. Google News shows him currently in 122 active news searches or articles. Jeff no longer has to send out press releases as he's on every reporter's speed dial concerning the telecom industry. Jeff's secret is not a secret at all. It's hard work. He publishes quotes and opinions daily on his website about all telecom matters, including rumors and trends. The CEO of telecom company A gets out of bed in the morning and decides to talk to his board about acquiring telecom company B. It would only be a minor exaggeration to say Jeff already has a quote ready to go up on his website about that. Jeff's quotes aren't necessarily exciting or controversial, but they are immediate and on demand for a busy breaking news environment. The pros of this approach is it's easy to get press. The con of this is very obvious. There's an enormous amount of effort and analysis that's required to go this approach. You have to be tuned into your industry, what's going on, and be available to constantly feed the media quotes and analysis. The fourth approach to getting quotes is to be memorable. And this is one of the ways in which I think everybody should sit and study quotes, because this is the way where I think the average eReleases client or the average person can spend a lot of time and get a lot of payoff when it comes to getting quotes. More than 98% of the quotes I see in press releases share one common denominator. They are not memorable. These are the safe quotes that will never get anyone fired and will also be approved in any corporate environment despite the levels of bureaucracy in which a press release has to get approved. We're very happy to have John's expertise at company XYZ, said Bob T. Slacker, Executive Vice President of Marketing for company XYZ. These type of quotes can be paraphrased in the body of any article with no loss in meaning. The danger is that without having to include the quote, there is the possibility the mention of your company can completely disappear from the article. In this hiring press release example I just gave, the company will generally usually appear because, hey, you just hired someone and you know, the how, what, when, where, and why is where's this person now working. However, if you're issuing a press release forecasting trends or breaking important news within your industry and you've included a safe, weak quote, there is the possibility that the journalist writing the story will cut you from it. However, there's a stronger likelihood that the journalist's boss, an overworked managing editor, will be the one who cuts you from the story, especially if you're not famous. This managing editor doesn't care that you broke the story. There would have been no story if you hadn't raised the issue originally in your press release. If you don't add something unique to the story, you just don't belong. This is why you have to protect yourself with an irresistible quote, one in which something is lost if your quote is removed or paraphrased. By making your quote an integral or memorable part of the story, you guarantee you and your company will be included in the story because all quotes in the end must be attributed. Think of a quote as a soundbite, a small snippet that promotes or exemplifies the full-length example. Here's an example of an irresistible quote. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. And that's by Brian Gerald O'Driscoll. This isn't from a press release, but it's a great quote nonetheless. Not everyone has to be Mark Twain, a poet, or comedian to develop an irresistible quote. It helps, though. But specifics can be used over generalities in a quote. Use emotion or humor to make a connection. Pay attention to how your quote sounds. A great quote should flow well. You should be able to read it and it sound natural. Here's some example of good quotes. When search engines can't figure out the meaning of your web page and you're making it nearly impossible for them to send traffic to your site, even when your potential customer is looking for exactly what you have to sell, said Robert Sirecki, president at RocketClicks, an SEO marketing agency. I think this quote succinctly describes the problem in a clear and concise way. I can't imagine a journalist not including this quote when writing a story unless they're being paid by the word. Another great example is, for many single adults, dating is the ultimate sporting competition, says Chad Stone, author of a humorous guide to dating called Confessions of a Middle-Aged Babe Magnet. Men and women train for their dates as if they were competing in a world-class sporting event, and many singles aren't happy until they have won the equivalent of a gold medal in dating. This is an interesting concept, and the media should like it, especially if the press release piggybacks on something like the Olympics here. It is entertaining from beginning to end, and it is easy to envision a journalist cutting and pasting it in its entirety into a story. Another example, we create an energy boomerang, Berkeley visiting scholar Ozzie Zahner remarked during a recent PBS interview. The harder we throw energy into the grid, the harder demand comes back to hit us on the head. More efficient solar cells, taller wind turbines, and advanced biofuels are all just ways of throwing harder. What I like here is the introduction of a compelling visual, the boomerang, for something that is hard to visualize, the ebb and flow of energy consumption. The action of throwing carries this metaphor through the rest of the quote. Another example, BitCandy's creator remarked, the new music tastemakers today are no longer the record executives sitting in their cushy corner offices, but more so the savvy music kid who's on the blogosphere 24/7. Today, a music fan in rural Alaska with a high broadband connection can discover the next big artist with more ease and accuracy than a seasoned record label veteran. I like the descriptive language. I like how it ties in one person from rural Alaska. There feels like a story there. I want to know more. I would also consider adding fat cat before the mention of record executives sitting in their cushy corner offices because I like the sound of it and the cliche it evokes. Another example. What we did with Chat Random is identify what was toxic about the video chat room environment and clean it up with some key protective and preventative measures, Chat Random's co-founder Alan Fox says. Our users appreciate this unique and appreciate this unique aspect and respect our site, or they're not allowed to participate. The goal here is to help people build successful, not seedy connections. Disclosure, Chat Random is an eReleases personal publicist client. I like the language here, especially the use of toxic. I also like the weaker standard language. Our users appreciate this unique aspect and respect our site, and how it's countered by the stern, unexpected statement, or they're not allowed to participate. It shows a great restraint and thoughtfulness that the media should appreciate. Example, trash aspirin. Use white willow bark and hawthorn, said the People's Chemist, Shane Allison, who holds an MS degree in organic chemistry and is author of Over-the-Counter Natural Cures book. The industry couldn't market the natural ingredient as their own. You can't patent Mother Nature. To have a monopoly, they had to alter it a bit. I like how this quote begins and how it uses short concepts and quips like you can't patent Mother Nature. He easily conveys what he believes are the problems and motivations behind the current pharmaceutical industry. Emotion is a great way to bring the journalist into a press release, and hopefully that journalist will see the value in including that quote in any article they develop. Quotes act emotionally here. The quotes in this example are long, but they help to build an emotional connection with the reader. That emotion is hard to be conveyed through objective journalistic writing, so the likelihood of the quotes being used in whole or in part is strong in any resulting story. The press release in which these quotes appeared resulted in lots of interview requests, so I think it's a great example. I believe that men are tired and frustrated with the antiquated male role models of society. Men are beginning to ask themselves deeper questions like, how can I create deeper, more intimate relationships? What can I do to become a more involved father and connect with my children? How can I find a career that fulfills me and brings me joy while providing adequate income for me and my family? These are the types of questions which, when truly answered, can help decrease high divorce rates, eradicate fatherlessness, cut down on male suicide rates, and will ultimately redefine manhood for a lot of men, states author, motivational speaker, and radio show host Michael Taylor. And it continues, so if you have bought into the negative male stereotypes that men are testosterone-driven, sex-crazed Neanderthals that only think about sex, sports, money, and material possessions, think again. There is a new revolution brewing, and it's called A New Conversation with Men. And it's empowering men to redefine manhood and masculinity, and it is changing the way men see themselves for the better. Concludes Taylor.
Mickie, this is Dave. Sorry to break in. There are several folks in the chat room asking the same question here. I guess a couple times you've mentioned the Personal Publicist Program. Can you just tell us what that is real briefly, and then you can continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sure. The Personal Publicist Program, you can learn more if you go to personalpublicist.com. It's a high-end, do-it-all-for-you PR campaign that includes myself and my staff, Heather Fuller, in which we develop a comprehensive one-year PR strategy. We write the releases. We pitch headlines to the client. We take a broad overview of the customer, and we look for opportunities like using the contrarian view, like using engaging quotes, all of the things that we have and know in our 14 years of experience with PR and press releases, and sort of tap into a company's business. We look at what they have in the pipeline, trade show events, anything that we can sort of bring in some strategy and put some planning back into PR. And again, it's something you learn about at personalpublicist.com. I'm now going to talk about tweaking good quotes, and here I think it's important to spend a little time, because I think a lot of people write decent quotes. They might be safe, but they're all opportunities where you can tweak them, change them, make them tighter, stronger, maybe bringing in some alliteration or playfulness, opportunities for bringing in images, things like that. And most quotes can be improved. Even the examples that I'm going to list where I feel like I've improved the client's quotes a bit. Here's the example of the client's quote. At present, marketers are too cavalier and even abusive with their approach to social media relationships because it's a powerful tool which can pay off, but only if used thoughtfully. Nan Martin, Managing Director at Revelation Research, said, "It's that very thin line between courting and annoying. Right now, some brands are effectively drawing people in, but then undermining their equity by what happens next with their social media activity." My version: at present, marketers are too cavalier and even abusive with their approach to social media relationships because it's a powerful tool which can pay off, but only if used thoughtfully. Nan Martin, Managing Director at Revelation Research, said, "It's that very thin line between courting and annoying where brands are effectively drawing people in, then undermining their trust." I like the original quote, but felt removed when the word equity came up. I suspect it's a term the company or the industry uses in there to talk about perhaps goodwill or establishing things like that. But for me, I didn't know what it was, so it drew me out of the quote. I felt that it really boiled down to the core concept of trust. And in the end, you have a shorter, tighter quote, and it's just a very minor tweak. Moving on to another tweak, the client's original quote is, "In some offices, fun was viewed as a distraction," said Cleargear President Lee Gersten. "More companies are learning that playtime has tangible benefits. Even small companies can see the ROI. Employee meetings and company events are also driving corporate customers back for more toys. Our gizmos feed everyone's inner child," added Gersten. "We sell fun." My version: in some offices, fun is viewed as a distraction, said Cleargear.com President Lee Gersten. But some forward-thinking companies are beginning to realize that playtime can boost ROI and morale, feeding both an employee's inner child as well as the bottom line. While I personally like the tagline in the original, "We sell fun," something that's self-serving rarely survives making it to print. I think pulling the quotes together and setting up the feeding of both the inner child and the bottom line makes for a tighter, more interesting read. Another tweak is the participants and the donations have grown, which is welcome, but so has the need for funds, said Sheila Gilbert, National President of SVDP. Statistics show that the number of people living in poverty has outpaced everyone's expectations and have challenged our ability to keep up. Our hope is that this event will help put a spotlight on the issue. We want Americans to see those living in poverty as people, not statistic, and that their involvement can take people from survive to thrive. My version: statistics show that the number of people living in poverty has outpaced everyone's expectations and have challenged our ability to keep up, said Sheila Gilbert, National President of SVDP. We want Americans to see those living in poverty as people, not statistics, and that their involvement can take people from survive to thrive. While I think the original version is fine, it's out with safe standard language you might read in similar types of releases. I think leading with statistics outpacing expectations makes this a stronger, tighter quote. I really think the power in both versions of the quote is that poetic closing of taking people from survive to thrive. I think getting to that payoff sooner makes this a better quote and more likely to get picked up by the media. How to add pizzazz to bland quotes, and we all have them. Bland quotes, they're out there. So let's take a look at the original here. Training can be expensive for companies, so if they implement effective training methods, they are more likely to retain employees, thus minimizing the need for extensive training costs that are incurred when companies have high turnover, said Rafferty Pendry of Rethink Training, a web-based learning system. Rethink Training represents the new, effective way that a business can thoroughly train its employees and improve its bottom line by increasing productivity and trimming costs. Not bad, but nothing jumps out at me as exciting. It reads as safe, predictable language. I question whether you should acknowledge the obvious, that training is expensive. I would propose something like, effective training can throw a wrench into the revolving door of heavy turnover at most companies, both saving money and boosting morale. It is cheap insurance that helps to increase productivity and ensure a baseline among employees' skills and expectations, said Rafferty Pendry of Rethink Training, a web-based learning system. This is shorter, more visual, and leads with the benefits rather than an objection, which is the cost of the training. And now, let's look at the earlier quote. We're very happy to have John Q. Smith's expertise at Company XYZ, said Bob T. Slacker, Executive Vice President of Marketing for Company XYZ. These type of quotes are both the bane and lifeblood of corporate press releases. They are weak and completely non-personal, and yet catalog a very real and personal event, the corporate hire. You can have fun with these quotes, which works especially well if you have an edgy corporate culture. Sure, John Q. Smith looked good on paper, 20 years in the printing industry, a long and respected sales history at company ABC. However, it was when his phone rang and we heard the ringtone "Pour Some Sugar on Me" that we knew we had found our VP of Sales, said Bob T. Slacker, Executive Vice President of Marketing for Company XYZ. You can also take a more professional approach but personalize your new hire. We are excited to welcome John Q. Smith aboard as VP of Sales. John relishes something that makes most sales executives who lead a sales team want to hide under their desk. He thinks nothing of picking up the phone and calling prospects directly to determine what are the current concerns of the marketplace, said Bob T. Slacker, Executive Vice President of Marketing for Company XYZ. You hired this person for a reason. Incorporate his skills or track record into your quote. John Q. Smith is one of the top sales executives in the printing industry, and we are lucky to have him at Company XYZ. John has a proven track record of growing company revenues through the use of social media engagement and mobile technology, which together allows the frontline sales team to collaborate and close sales while in the field, said Bob T. Slacker, Executive Vice President of Marketing for Company XYZ. In summary, quotes are an exciting way to get media coverage and ensure that your company's name will appear in any resulting article. Again, key factors to keep in mind when creating memorable quotes are humor, uniqueness, language, how it sounds, and looking for opportunities to take something and elevate it. Everything can be improved upon. And I think that Dave's going to go to Q&A now.
Right, Mickie. It's Q&A time now. We're going to give it a try to go live if anyone wants to. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and you can chime in with a question. I may just unmute everybody. That might be easier. Let's give that a try. Well,
The good news is that not all that is coming in. So technically we're still going to be paying because we're paying through an API.
any questions? Raise a hand. We may not be working this right.
I hear somebody in the background.
Hold on, I saw a hand raised. Here we go. John, I think I found you. We're going to find you again. Okay, can you speak now, John?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Question is just about schedules, and what you recommend is how often to put out a press release.
I think it really depends on the size of the company and what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're a startup, you should be issuing press releases, I think, at least once a month. If you're a small business and there's not a lot of developments in your industry or within your company, I think it's really important to try to strive to do at least a press release every quarter. Ideally, if you could move that up to 6 a year, I think you'd see benefit to that. The importance is you don't want it to become something that you feel is a rote task, or that's something you do and as a result you just issue safe press releases and you don't take chances and you don't really look at the the bigger picture of trying to create press releases that will really stand out in the media and get the media's attention. If you're going to do like 1 or 2 amazing press releases or 5 or 6 standard boilerplate type press releases, I would say do the fewer. But it really depends on where you're at. I mean, you have companies like Microsoft and Apple that are doing, several a day throughout parts of the year. So it's a factor that really depends on the circumstance of the company. But any company that's really serious about PR and really wanting to grow and are in a growth stage should try to strive to do a press release a month. And that's where I think having a bigger picture and developing a PR strategy and looking at your timeline is really important.
Thanks. I have one follow-up question on that.
Sure.
On your personal publicist program, do you help customers work on what their editorial calendar might be? And I'm not sure if everyone knows what that is. You might want to explain what an editorial calendar might be. But I just find that it's really tough to kind of figure out how many. It's quarterly, and I just want to know if that's some kind of expertise that you can bring to the table as well.
That's exactly what we do. I mean, when we take on a personal publicist client, the first thing we do is we want to be able to fill the entire year. And if we know that a product's being launched in June and there's a industry event that's happening in October, we know that we want to plan certain months accordingly. But we also know, want to take a look at the schedules of certain publications, industry publications, where they all have editorial calendars where, March might be where they focus on human resources or a particular niche. And if you have a story that sort of speaks to that editorial calendar event, then you're a shoo-in to have your press release hopefully turned into an article. So it's sort of like matchmaking, and it's higher level stuff rather than just sending out a release. And that's exactly where building a year-long PR strategy and a timeline plus holes is where our expertise comes in, and certainly looking at editorial calendars is just one of those things that we do.
Okay, Mickie, we have another question here. Well, we have several, but let's see. It's a question from S. Brown. Sorry, S. Brown, don't know your first name, but I've unmuted you now. Can you speak to us?
Yes, I can hear you. My
Great.
name is Sequoia. Thank you. Thank you, Mickie, for doing this. Very informative. My question is, as a small business and a startup, I want to know what you can suggest as far as subjects that would be appropriate for press releases. Obviously, you want to release things that are interesting. I would assume product releases and things of that nature, but what other types of things are appropriate for a startup to try to post about each month?
Well, we have an article or a roundup of press release topic ideas that might be worth looking at. If you go to eReleases.com/ideas, it's a shortcut that'll take you to the article where we have, like, I think more than 50, like 64 ideas for a press release. Some of them are a little generic and may not speak to the startup environment, but a lot of startups, as they're developing and growing, they have milestones. It might be their first large sponsor or alignment or partner. Those are events that are worthy of a press release. There's a lot of new energy and goodwill that's created with startups. So special hires, special investors, whether it's angel investors or a round of funding, those are all events that are worth press release announcements. If you're doing something that's community-based or even local or tying in your service with a charity or something like that, those are all sort of things that can be tied in. I think that with a lot of startups, you see a lot of changes in the products or services being offered as a startup responds to the marketplace and sees, a lot of people are asking for this feature, let's put it in there. And so, those are all types of improvements and milestones that you can incorporate as, next release type releases. We've introduced the next version of our product or service, and these are the things that we've introduced in reaction to, our user base. And you sort of, want to propel that energy that you have as a startup and translate that into the page. So I see lots of different types of press releases used by startups, and those are just ones that come to mind. You know, if we were to look a little bit more at your particular company, we could probably certainly find some other opportunities as well. But I do recommend that people take a look at that eReleases.com/ideas, and you know, that's a good place to bookmark and just, you know, look at some time for inspiration for lots of ideas.
Thank you. And one other question, if I could.
Sure.
I was wondering if you had any tips for what we could incorporate into the releases to have our releases seen by our particular industry. So, for instance, my company sells to salons. So what could I include in there, you know, beside obviously salon jargon? Is there anything else I could do to make sure more salons or distributors for salons see the press release?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you have anyone that's on your board or anything like that who's an expert or someone who's recognized in the industry. I don't know if you've networked with people who are important in the industry or considered visionaries. You know, sometimes those type of people love startups and are willing to give quotes that you can include in your press release. And you know, going back to the original quote, "Be famous or an established expert." If you have an established expert in the industry who's willing to say something nice about your product or service or about your company and allow you to include that in a press release, that's a great opportunity to stand out, because everybody knows that expert in your industry and they're going to pay attention to what they're saying. And if you could have that moment happen in your press release and get that out there, that's a great way. So if you're not networking with people who are very well established, you know, you should, and you should try to make those kinds of connections with other people in your industry, get your products or services, you know, in front of them, and see if you can get some reactions or positive, negative thoughts. And if it's positive, say, you know, could I include this as a testimonial or as a quote within a press release? And a lot of people are saying, yeah, I can see that you're a startup. I certainly don't mind, you know, lending you my opinion. I think highly of the product, and so that's a great way to sort of, you know, leapfrog off of celebrity and experts within a particular industry.
Thank you. Great advice.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, this is Dave again. If there are any other questions, just raise your hand. I've figured out how to see them a little quicker now, and we'll unmute you, and the audio seems to be working fine. This may be last call for any more questions, but any more questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll move on to the final cleanup and say good day for today. Oh, here we have a question. Gary, hold on. There, Gary, I think we can hear you. Give it a try. Did you have a question? Well, I guess he doesn't have a question, or maybe I misread it. Okay, last call, going once, going twice. Any more questions? If not, we'll just move on. Thanks, Mickie. It was a great quotes, great questions and answers, some good advice there.
And again, I want to thank everybody who came today and hopefully learned a little bit. And I do appreciate your feedback. And you know, let us know how we did, pros, cons, you know, the good, the bad, and hopefully we'll get better at this, and we'll have a few more of these webinars in the future. And again, I wanted to thank Dave, and I want to thank everybody who attended, and I look forward to seeing you guys again in the future.
Thanks again, Mickie. It's been great. Till next time. Goodbye, all.